Hey guys, it's Jordan here from Switchwatch, back again with another review, this time of A Whole New World from Dolores Entertainment. Thanks to them for providing a review code so I can tell you guys if it's worth your hard-earned cash or not. Now, the question of the day is quite simple. What is your favourite modern, retro-styled game? Have a think about that. Let's get on with the review. Being nostalgic for classic retro video games is not a new thing. As we all get older, we all crave for something in our past, and there have been several highly successful games that have managed to capture that retro feel while bringing in modern touches. For me, the perfect example of this is Shovel Knight, but there are other candidates, and I suspect that a few people would put forth A Whole New World. As with many a retro title, the story of A Whole New World is basically told in the introduction. The world has been separated into two, a world of good and a world of evil. Naturally, the evil world manages to spill back into the good world and taken over. You are known as the Potion Master, who sets out to save the day by collecting energy crystals that have the power to defeat evil, or something like that. The story goes by so quickly and inconsequentially, you don't really need to pay attention to it. I will give the game credit for doing an opening storyboard, which is more than many classic games did, but you won't be playing this one for the story elements for sure. The soundtrack is pretty awesome with its retro vibes. An interesting addition to the music is that the fact there is a choice between retro 8-bit soundtrack and a more modern take. I actually really like both, and I found myself switching between the two quite regularly. I wouldn't call it a classic or anything, but it's definitely of a higher standard than I was expecting, and it's one of the best aspects of the game, to be honest. Visually, the game is okay if you're into the very retro 8-bit art style. I'm not sure how in keeping it is with what the NES could do, but it's definitely held itself back in order to look as authentic as possible. I think the main character, the Potion Master, looks very cool. His design is really well done as a sprite, and he definitely stands out amongst the crowd of retro heroes. The exterior backgrounds are full of depth and have parallax scrolling with its layers, something definitely not possible on the system at the time. It adds a lot to the game compared to how it would look if everything was static. It's all personal opinion, but I really like the retroness to A Whole New World. Performance was pretty decent for the most part. There were no crashes or anything, no slowdown when the action became too hectic. It was pretty smooth in that area. I did have the occasional issue of coming into the game from sleep mode though. It seems like I took the game by surprise and it struggled to wake up properly for about 10 seconds or so. Not a major issue, but a little odd nonetheless. The gameplay for A Whole New World is kind of a mix between Mega Man, Castlevania, and even a bit of Ghosts and Goblins. That is a high standard to live up to. As a side-scrolling platforming action game, you move from left to right, kill enemies, and make it to the boss at the end of each stage. It's pretty standard in that department, but A Whole New World does a few things to try and make it stand out more. The first thing is a two worlds concept. In each of the levels there are two planes of existence, the good world and the evil world. You begin in the normal world, which is, as you'd expect, normal. As you make your way through the level, you'll notice plenty of holes in the floor. These are not pits of death, instead they will take you to the evil world. This is where the world is twisted and full of even more enemies. Worst of all, it's upside down. If there's one thing that can instantly put me off any game, it's an upside down part. I'm just not into that, as I find them more of an annoyance rather than an interesting gameplay gimmick. Now, actually, A Whole New World was probably the least painful upside down experience that I think I've had, especially when it's for such an extended period of time. I'd rather it have been the right way up though. As the Potion Master, your weapon at hand is obviously a potion. I found this to be a little on the useless side thanks to the arch it takes after being thrown. It was often useless for enemies low to the ground. After defeating bosses, however, you will get more and more attacks, Mega Man style. You'll have one that can shoot a vertical lightning shot, some bouncing balls that switch elemental types between fire and ice every bounce. You can flip between all of your attack types with the shoulder buttons, and unlike Mega Man, they don't have their own energy bar, so you can use them as much as you like. The level design in A Whole New World is fairly decent. It starts off pretty basic, but Over the course of the handful of stages, the developers definitely get a little more adventurous. The second world starts to become more integral, as well as them becoming more sprawling and exploration driven. It started to develop into something that I didn't expect. One thing that I do very much appreciate in A Whole New World is that there are no respawning enemies, something which plagued NES games back in the day and was probably the biggest annoyance about the games from that era. The developers of A Whole New World made a great choice. Once an enemy is dead, it is dead for good. As far as difficulty goes, the game doesn't start off too bad, but the last couple of stages are more annoying than challenging. Games like Shovel Knight provide a solid challenge, but they're always doable, and you always feel like you can conquer it. A Whole New World, however, gives you the challenge by throwing dozens of enemies at you at once, while platforming upside down. It goes about adding difficulty in the wrong way, in my opinion. It doesn't help that A Whole New World takes lessons from Castlevania when getting hit, as the knockback provided is borderline obnoxious. After really digging the game in the first 3 stages or so, really by the last stage I started to enjoy it much less, and it really tested my patience if I actually wanted to stick with it or not. The game is fairly generous with its lives and checkpoint system though, much more lenient than the games that inspired it. You have 3 lives, and every time you perish you will be revived exactly where you left off. If you lose all of your lives, then it will send you back to the last checkpoint. This was a good move by the developers. Had it not been so nice in this regard, I probably would have given up the game around the halfway point. The one exception to this rule is when you're facing the bosses. You don't get revived while fighting the bosses, instead you're always sent back to the checkpoint outside of the boss room, so you have to do the boss from scratch. It makes sense, otherwise it would have been too easy to cheese the bosses by using all of your lives without consequence. As for value, you're looking at $9.99 or £8.99 in my opinion for 2 hours playtime with this kind of simplicity. It's on the edge as to whether I think the value is okay or not. It's obvious there's a lot of love gone into creating a classic feeling game, but I don't know if it's quite there. I would have preferred it if it was a few pounds cheaper, and that would have made me feel much better about its value. For those interested, A Whole New World would take up a surprisingly large 856 megabytes of storage. No, I have no idea where that memory goes either. I'm not going to lie when I say that had A Whole New World been released on the NES back in the day, there's no doubt in my mind it would be considered a classic of the console, along with Mega Man, Castlevania, Zelda and so on. Times have moved on however, and even though there's a case of quality retro about it, it's still held back by some of the pet peeves of the era. It has some nice visuals, music and decent controls, but I think modern gamers won't have the patience for it, and that's including me. The last 2 levels really soured my enjoyment since they went about difficulty in the wrong kind of way. I'm pretty sure retro fiends will still get a kick out of it though. As for me, I would rate A Whole New World a respectable 6.5 out of 10. It's above average, bordering on good, but not quite there for me. A few tweaks and it could have been an excellent retro adventure. Okay guys, you know what to do. If you're a regular Switch watcher, then consider hitting that like button. Leave a comment below letting me know which is your favourite modern retro game. For me, it has to be Shovel Knight. If you're new here, then hit that subscribe button for more awesome Switch content. Don't forget to head over to the website, switchwatch.co.uk, for news, reviews and features. Honestly guys, we're really pushing the website right now. There's some good stuff on there. Anyways, I've been Jordan from Switchwatch, and I'll see you next time.